I'm starting to feel a pinch in dangling plot threads. Hubert's been invited to a witch's sabbath, but also wants to keep an eye on the cursed dude, and to make sure Father Seville doesn't go on a witch-burning spree, and needs to know that the witches aren't just going to straight terrorize and murder innocent people, to say nothing of needing to guard Isabel, and check on Juan to make sure he's staying hidden, and keep talking to people around the city. Information brokers, thieves, poisoners, anyone who might provide a lead on any hired blades, assassins, bravos, etc. targeting Isabel. The DM has also tossed out hooks for other bizarre shit. Restless giants in the mountains north of the city, small outbreak of illness in the city, and of course all the preparation for the wedding. At any given moment, there's like 3 things I want to do. On some level, I know the DM is just fucking with me and keeping me on my toes. Half the time, 2 out of 3 plot threads are just red herrings or dead ends. The guy who plays Leona is almost as amused as the DM. He's content to focus on our real job and ignore all these other things as distractions. I try to be like him, but like I mentioned in the last update, when I'm a player, I just want to do everything. See everything. I think it comes from DMing so much. I don't like leaving stones unturned. Can't do it. So Hubert attends the witches' gathering at midnight. It's a group of men and women. They look pretty normal, just gathered in a clearing in the woods. Nonna Matucci is there too, so it's not just bad witches. Good and bad witches. Both. They talk about Father Seville, about the government of Tarraconensis, how Garibaldi's men are starting to crack down on witches. There's some arguments about how to proceed. Some, like Kondraka, want to fight back, strike down Seville, strike down Garibaldi or his daughter. Concerning stuff. But they debate. It's clear they plan to approach this problem as a unified group, and they are currently divided. Nonna Matucci, in particular, calmly advises them towards caution, and she seems highly respected. Nothing is decided right away. Hubert just listens. He's struck by how mundane it is. How normal they seem. After a while, they take a break from arguing. They sing some simple chants, pass around some drinks, sacrifice a lamb to Ranalar. I know I like to do these fake double takes in this story, so here's where I should be like, wait, what was that last one? But honestly, it's not that big a deal. It's just a lamb. Ranalar is apparently the Black Frog, a minor demigod or entity that the witches believe grants them some sort of power and connects them to nature. Hubert's not a judgmental kind of guy, mostly. If they sacrificed a human, that'd be a different story. But a lamb is delicious, so it feels like it'd be hypocritical to object too much. Plus, after that, they say it's time to ride on a broom. Okay, now we're talking. Should be fascinating. Real witchcraft shit. Well, kinda. The witches break out some sort of strange oily concoction and a brush. Hubert knows a drug when he sees it. Turns out, riding a broom is just slang. For dab an incredibly potent hallucinogen on your anus and then trip balls for the rest of the night. Slightly disappointing, but Hubert's never tried this particular hallucinogen, so he gives it a go. It's quite the experience. He gets why they talk about it like it's flying. It's a strong out-of-body experience with heightened senses. Parts of the gathering descend into a bit of an orgy at this point. Hubert only remembers bits and pieces at the end of the meeting. When he wakes the following morning, he mulls over everything that happened when he's shaking the leaves out of his robes and heading back to the city. But he's definitely gained the trust of the witches. And he's at least semi-confident that they're not a purely malicious group about to go murdering people. If they murder someone, it's clear it will be a careful, measured decision. He returns and tries to get a little sleep before taking a shift with Isabel. He also visits Nonna Matucci again and asks her to craft him another Cimaruta. He tells her he's worried the witches will do something rash, and wants some defense against it. She says she will make one for him tomorrow. Isabel tells Leona that she is very nervous about finally meeting Aistulf. Leona tries to reassure her, but she's nervous too. Less about Isabel meeting her betrothed, and more about her living through the next night. The masked celebration is as much of a clusterfuck as we feared. We keep Leona glued to Isabel, since she's the most capable of defending her in an immediate conflict. Hubert and Agrippa scout the crowd, making nice and trying to identify possible threats. We meet all of the various players face to face, or mask to mask anyway. There's Sergius Anthemus, Princeps of Carthagenesus, a smarmy, sharp-tongued little bastard that seems to find everything amusing. He's hounding after Isabel, trying to worm his way between her and her betrothed. Then there's Princepa Rosalina Segura from Basconia. Rosalina seems to be barely containing some serious hatred for Isabel. A thin facade of civility masking naked rage and loathing. What's the story there? Between Leona eavesdropping on the women's conversation and Hubert and Agrippa asking around, some details begin to take form. Rosalina is set to marry Juan, and it becomes clear that she is well aware of what's been going on between him and Isabel. We also meet some of Garibaldi's trusted nobility. Lady Giovanelli, we already know. She was employing Agrippa at the start of the arc. She's a gruff woman, a warrior in general first and foremost. Lord Angelucci, on the other hand, is a sly old dog. He predates Duke Garibaldi, was in good graces with Isabel's grandfather. Friendly enough guy, but he clearly has secrets. Finally, Lord Radelchis Benevento. A loyal man, puts family and homeland above all else. Approves of the wedding tentatively, although he fears it will be an opening for Peltiberia to take advantage. There is a late arrival to the festivities. It appears that Duke Rodrigo Diaz of Septimania and Andalus has arrived. Unlike the other neighboring city-states that sent their heirs, Duke Diaz has arrived in person. He is well beloved by much of Spitalia, a larger-than-life figure. He is a tall, broad man, imposing with a regal bearing. A renowned general that conquered a neighboring city-state and ruled it justly. Famously pious, a devout follower of Torath, said to be honest and forthright and noble. There's a lot of people to keep track of, and they're all suspects. And if Spitalian intrigue lives up to its reputation, they're all probably guilty of some kind of subterfuge. We meet Aistulf as well. The Princeps of Peltiberia is handsome and polite, well-groomed, well-dressed, fit, friendly, charming. He seems like quite the catch, except for how awkward and distant he is when he meets Isabel. Hubert has met men like this before. Enjoyed their company even. And the most common explanation is pretty simple. So, while he's in the crowd searching for assassins, Hubert schmoozes with Aistulf's staff, tests out his gut feeling. Confirmed. Hubert's gaydar is on point. This creates an interesting possible solution. Hubert plans to talk to Isabel at the next private opportunity to suggest that she consider the possibility of being open with Aistulf about Juan, and trying to reach some sort of mutually agreeable relationship. What an elegant solution that would be. Aistulf gets a beard, Isabel gets Juan, everyone gets their alliance. They don't have much time to consider how great this would be, because, of fucking course, assassins strike while Hubert is mingling with Aistulf's people. Isabel had stepped out to the balcony for some air, and a group of masked men position themselves around her and strike simultaneously. They have Leona and Isabel almost surrounded. Bad move on their part. They really needed to fully surround them to have much of a chance of getting to the Princepa. Leona puts Isabel behind her and engages half a dozen men at once. Even with surround bonuses, these guys have a hard time with Leona's defense. When she maneuvers them into a refreshment table, they get even more tangled. That's not the only problem, though, because a second cluster of assassins have emerged near Hubert, and seem to be targeting Aistulf himself. Agrippa and Hubert have to try to fight them off. Difficult job, and not one they do well. Hubert's most powerful offensive alchemical weapons are way too destructive to use in a party at the Duke's palace. Between Agrippa's physical toughness and Hubert's poison, however, they manage to kill or subdue the assassins. Hubert makes absolutely sure to lightly tag the one giving some orders to the others with a paralytic. He wants this guy alive. Leona, meanwhile, handles her batch easily. These guys just did not account for her at all. This is a woman with 18 dex in a 3d6 world, before any tier or stat bonuses, and a shield fighting style bonus so good we end up deciding to nerf it later, requiring her to get some tiers for it to stay as good. Agrippa has to treat some of Leona's wounds, and enlists Hubert's help when he finds her poisoned. But it's nothing the pair of them can't handle. Overall, I'd give the attempt a 4 out of 10. They got access, poison, and some positioning down pretty well, but severely underestimated the bodyguards, us, and honestly, we weren't sure what their escape plan really was. And now, we had a live prisoner. Duke Garibaldi has some of his men take the guy away for an interrogation, and the party is over. The trio escorts Isabel to her chambers. She's a little shaken, but seems okay. Hubert lets her know about Aistulf's preference for men and suggests his idea. She seems to consider it, but doesn't make any hasty decisions. Hubert had planned to make contact with the witches again, or check on Kandraka's victim. But it's late, and he was injured in the fighting. Everyone reluctantly turns in, with a rotating watch over Isabel as she sleeps. We sleep in. By the time we get up, we learn that Garibaldi's men have failed to extract any useful information from the assassin. And we discover that last night, while the party enjoyed the masquerade, the small outbreak of illness had exploded into a full-blown contagion. People throwing around words like plague. The city is locking down into a quarantine. To make matters worse, Father Seville has now whipped up another frenzied crowd, blaming the witches for the plague. By the time we hear about this, the guards have already begun rounding up known witches and taking them into custody. Agrippa leaves to investigate this plague. If it's as serious as people fear, that takes priority over bodyguard duty, to his mind. So Leona and Hubert have to juggle their duties on their own for a while. The sensation of dealing with all these plot threads is not unlike herding cats. Matucci has been imprisoned. The assassin is not giving up any information to Garibaldi's men. Seville is still persecuting witches. And he seems to have appealed to a higher authority, because a Knights Serpentis arrived in the city right before they closed the gates for quarantine, apparently to assist in rooting out witches. Assassins are now threatening Isabel, Aistulf, and possibly Juan. We keep Aistulf with Isabel as much as possible, and they begin to bond. But the intrigue never ends. Sergius Anthimos calls upon Isabel. The conversation fraught with double meanings and veiled threats. Hubert's pretty good at reading between the lines. Sergius seems to want to disrupt the marriage. Perhaps to marry Isabel himself? Hubert checks on Nonna Matucci to see if she could still craft that chimaruta. He has to fetch her various tools, and when she finishes, she tells him he has to go and feed her people for her. Really? Hubert says he will do what he can, but the people might have to go without a free meal for a day. Matucci calmly accepts this, and lets him know that if that's the case, the cimarutas she's fashioned will cease working. Hubert can't believe he's being extorted by a kindly old grandmother. He's not, really. Matucci explains that her magic, Bifana magic, is fueled by the good spirits and positive emotions of the people. With the plague and everything else, spirits are already dangerously low. And the Strega's curses, fueled by the opposite, will be at full strength. If he does not carry out Nonna Matucci's routine and provide that small spark of hope and happiness, she has no confidence whatsoever that her Simarutas will defend anyone. So now Hubert has to make time to go make pasta for the masses. Nonna Matucci gives him very specific instructions on how to make the pasta, what cauldron to use, what herbs to put in it, and what rhymes to sing over it. Hubert listens carefully. Despite his better judgment, he heads out to lose critical hours of his day feeding the people. Meanwhile, Rosalina Segura has visited Isabel as well. Leona isn't as good as Hubert at this intrigue shit, but she knows threats when she hears them, even ones couched in pretty language. By the end of the conversation, one thing is clear. Rosalina has discovered Juan's location, and does not expect him to live through the afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.